Hello, I'm Kim Merrifield, and welcome to another episode of On the Table, the show that explores what's on your table. On today's episode, we'll be getting cultured and taking a deep dive into the dairy section, where we'll get a slice of cheese history and learn the facts behind your favorite fromage. Whether it's a sharp cheddar, a pungent blue, a mild Emmental, or something completely different, cheese is a beloved and versatile delicacy that has been enjoyed for thousands of years. And what can I say? It only gets better with age. For today's appetizer, we'll look at the way it came to be and the veritable melting pot of global cheeses that stand not alone, but among many. Let's take a closer look. The origin story of cheese dates back to approximately 7,000 years ago, though some records indicate it may have been even sooner. Historians speculate that it was likely discovered by accident, and not under the most appetizing of circumstances. See, back in those days, the best airtight containers that nature had to offer were animal stomachs, and these were used by farmers, traders, and nomads alike to store perishable liquids like milk, and be able to transport them long distances. At some point along an unsuspecting nomad's journey, the milk reacted with the natural enzymes, which caused it to curdle and eventually separate, resulting in coincidental curds that were a dense source of nutrition and could last much longer than milk in its liquid form. Over the years, this natural process was harnessed, and people began developing new methods of cheese making. They started adding salt to preserve it, experimenting with moisture levels, and aging their cheeses in cool, dark environments to help them develop firmer textures and complex flavor profiles. I guess you could say that was when humanity first invented the wheel. Alright, enough of my cheesy puns. On this show, we're all about moderation, but sometimes I just can't help myself. Speaking of guilty pleasures, cheese has become much more than a survival food in the thousands of years since its invention. It's become an indulgent addition to the daily diets of dozens of cultures around the world. Yes, few can resist cheese's pull. For our main course, we'll take a tour du fromage and get a sampling of some varieties that you know and love, and a few others that you may not have heard of. Our journey begins with a trek across Europe, the continent many of us may associate with cheese, but certainly not the only one that has it. Our first stop is France, which is famous for their brie, a soft, creamy cheese with a firm and fragrant natural rind. Often the centerpiece of a charcuterie board, brie pairs beautifully with crusty bread, peppery arugula, and dried fruits like apricots and figs. Add in a salty or savory component, and you have a winning combination of contrasting textures and flavors that's sure to make your taste buds sing. If you like something a little bolder, and don't mind a little extra funk, then look into Roquefort, a French blue cheese with a pungent flavor and aroma. Our next stop on the European leg of our journey is Italy, another prime destination for cheese lovers. From fresh and creamy ricotta, mozzarella, and burrata, to sharp and earthy Parmigiano Reggiano and Pecorino Romano, there's an incredible range of cheese styles to be found here. These familiar favorites are just the tip of the iceberg, given how many varieties are region-specific. In the northern part of the country, for example, there's a selection of local alpine cheeses that make for a hearty addition to a bowl of gnocchi. The fresh cheeses would pair best with juicy, ripe tomatoes and fragrant herbs, and the firmer cheeses are best enjoyed shaved over a pasta dish, a vegetable soup, or atop a lightly dressed salad. From Italy, we drift across the Mediterranean over to Greece, the home of moist, crumbly feta. Its salty, briny flavor is reminiscent of the sea itself, and it makes a fantastic addition to fresh salads, alongside a handful of Kalamata olives, or stuffed inside a plump medjool date with a sprinkle of walnuts and a drizzle of honey for a sweet and savory snack. That's one of my favorite ways to enjoy feta, and if you haven't tried it yet, don't hesitate. It tastes wonderful with honey, and the contrast between the chewiness of the dates, the soft and salty cheese, and the crisp walnuts makes for a bite that feels truly indulgent. Further east, we arrive in the Levant, which is known for a unique variety of cheese called Lebna, a thick, salted, spreadable cheese which is made from strained yogurt and is typically served with a drizzle of olive oil, fresh or dried herbs, and warm pita for dipping. This is a popular breakfast throughout the region. The Lebna itself is great as a spread or dip at any time of the day. Like yogurt, it complements a variety of foods, adding a cooling contrast to grilled vegetables or spiced meats. But its silky texture pairs best alongside a platter of crisp cucumbers and sweet cherry tomatoes. Olives too, if you're a fan. You can usually find Lebna at international grocery stores that specialize in Middle Eastern foods, but it can also be made at home, with yogurt, salt, and a cheesecloth if you're interested in making your own. The next leg of our journey takes us into the heart of India, where you can find a firm variety of cheese called paneer. Its mild, neutral flavor makes it a perfect vehicle for warm, fragrant spice blends and rich curry sauces. And its solid, spongy texture is resilient to heat, which means you'll often find it served cooked or grilled tandoori style. When marinated and grilled, paneer develops a caramelized crust, all while retaining its signature bite. One of my favorite Indian dishes, and one that is well worth a try if you haven't already, is a dish called malai kofta, which uses paneer as a binding agent to hold together a mixture of potatoes and vegetables, which are then fried to perfection and served in a spiced tomato curry sauce, which is just as delicious as it sounds. Of course, there are dozens of diverse dairy delights I did not have time to mention. White Stilton of England, Mexico's queso fresco, halloumi from Cyprus, and countless others. But sadly, our rennet road trip has to come to an end. Now we head back home to the US. But I'd be remiss to overlook what Americans have done with cheese. Not the highly processed, vaguely cheese-like products we're best known for, but the classic cheddars of Vermont and Wisconsin, made by both artisanal cheesemakers and humble family farms alike. But no matter where you look, there's bound to be quality cheeses, and sometimes you don't have to travel too far to find them. And if you want to support local cheese producers, check out a nearby farmer's market, or do your research and take a day trip out to one of these farms yourself. You'll be surprised at what's available, and you'll be directly supporting the folks that made it possible, so you really can't go wrong. But with a world of wonderful cheeses to choose from, how do you find one that suits your needs? With such a wide and abundant selection, where does one begin? For our last segment, we'll let our senses be the guide. When it comes to selecting the best varieties of cheese, many might look toward the price tag or the packaging for help. But what matters most, above any of that, are its properties. The qualities we can see, touch, smell, feel, and taste. Think about how you might choose an apple from the produce section, for example. First, you'll look at the varieties. Some are crisp, some are firm, some are sweet, others sour. If you're making a pie, you might look for a Granny Smith. But if you want one for a midday snack, you'll probably go for a Gala. So, the first thing you should think of when you select a cheese is how you'll want to use it. Are you using it as a pizza topping? Are you putting it on a sandwich? Are you making fondue? Or maybe you're serving it with charcuterie. Knowing this in advance makes the selection process a whole lot easier and helps you find the right category. We'll get into those a little later. Back to our apple example. Say you want a Fuji apple to eat on its own. You've ruled out the other varieties. The next thing you'll probably look for is the color, shape, and size. And if you're anything like me, you'll try to pick the largest, reddest, roundest apple with the least amount of denser bruises. You'll pick them up, turn them around, let their waxy, dimpled surface catch the light from above, and you'll feel the weight of them in your hand, the density of the apple. Sight, texture, and touch. And these are all equally important in choosing a cheese. By looking at the color, texture, and density, you can determine whether your cheese is soft or semi-soft, meltable or sliceable, mild or intense. This is where the categories come into play. Fresh cheeses usually come with a looser texture, like cottage cheese or mascarpone. These don't melt and are better eaten cold and as is. You can also use these as spreads or dips, or as an ingredient to add creaminess to a sauce, batter, or dessert. Slightly firmer than this are options like chèvre, aka goat cheese, and other crumbly cheeses like feta and gorgonzola. These are great as a garnish or topping and pack a lot of flavor into a small amount. Next up, we have the semi-soft varieties. These are things like provolone and Havarti. Sliceable yet smooth, with a delicate and mild flavor which makes them great for sandwiches or any time you want something with a smooth melt. From here we move on to semi-hard. These are your Goudas, your cheddars, your Swiss cheeses. These are dense and structured and easy to slice into cubes for a cheese board. But not unlike our semi-soft cheeses, these melt beautifully as well. They just might take a little longer to do so. By now, I imagine you picked up the pattern. The longer a cheese is aged, the firmer the texture becomes and the bolder the flavor, and no cheese represents this better than good old Parmesan. When you look at a block of Parm, you'll probably notice how dense and rough it is on the surface. And when you taste it, you'll uncover layers of sharp and nutty flavor that can only come from an extended aging period. Hard cheeses like this are best to buy as a block or wheel. Buying them pre-shredded or grated might save time, but it costs flavor, due to the preservatives the manufacturers often add to stave off spoilage. Shredding and grating your cheeses might take a few extra seconds of prep work, but I promise you it's worth the effort. Your taste buds will thank you if you do. Anyway, to make a long story short, there is no best cheese. Only the best cheese for you and the dish you're making. At the end of the day, it's very much a matter of personal preference. Just listen to your senses and let the taste, textures, and types guide your decision. Then you really can't go wrong. As you can see, I brought out nearly every cheese I had in my refrigerator to do this show. Some of them have been in there quite a while. Believe it or not, it's not this one. This is new. Actually, wasn't a huge fan of the blue Stilton. I tried it, but it was a little bitter for my taste. Now, the rest of what you see here, I have a brie. I have this one, it's a Gouda cheese that was made from goat's milk. This is called Midnight Moon. This is actually one of my personal favorites. I'd recommend you try it if you find it. I have some lebna, some sheep's milk feta, fried cheese curds, and finally, a sampler of Spanish cheeses. I've never actually tried any of these, so this is a first for me. Okay, here goes nothing. Let's give these a try. If I can get them open. Don't worry, we'll cut that out. I'm not going to make you sit through watching me open these. Okay, so before we get started, we have an Iberico cheese, Cabra, and Manchego. Let's start with the Iberico. Get a little sample of that from the end. It's got a somewhat soft texture. It has an interesting bite. Very smooth. It's definitely a high moisture cheese. I would try this one again. Next is the Cabra. I heard this was a goat's milk cheese that was soaked in wine. That should be good. This one's a lot more delicate. It's got a tang to it. But overall, pretty mild. I think I like this one a little more than I like the first one. And lastly, Manchego. Let's grab a little off the end there. Again, smooth texture. This one has more of a bite than either of the previous two. Again, would highly recommend. These are all very good selections. It would pair pretty nicely with some charcuterie or crackers, or really whatever else you have on hand. So yeah, I would definitely buy these once again. Now a little palate cleanser. Some of these crackers have olives in them. Pretty good. But yeah, that was our little cheese sampling section. What more can I say? Now for some food for thought. Think of some of those cavern-aged cheeses. Hidden away in a cool, dark cave, they slowly mature. They develop firm, thick rinds, hardened by time and stillness. Their interiors develop texture and complexity, sweetness, earthiness, all on their own by virtue of patience and resilience. And when they're finally ready, after years of quiet preparation, they emerge into the light, a better version of themselves. Change happens slowly, silently, but steadily, and often from within. It's a gradual process that takes place internally and out of sight. But when you look back on where you were and where you are now, you can begin to appreciate the conditions that made you. All that time you spent waiting, hoping for the warmth and the light to peek in, that time was not spent in vain. It was preparing you for becoming who you were meant to be. And that's it for today's spread of On the Table. I hope this episode offered you something enriching and helped feed your curiosity. Thanks again for joining me, and remember, at my table, you're always welcome. Are we rolling or not?
Yeah, rolling and unmuted, yeah.
Oh, okay.